And we are live, Kate. Good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning.
Well,
Yes,
it's
well,
not
it's
good
not.
morning for you. It's good morning for me, right?
That's that's right. Yes, so that's kind of the weird thing is I am saying, it's morning for you, afternoon for me, but we're here in the same time, and how wonderful is that, right?
It is super. It's super convenient. This technology has really allowed conversations like this to take place across the pond so easily, and it's really really great to live in these times for this reason.
Exactly, exactly.
How do you say good morning in Danish? Have you picked up some Danish while since you've
Yeah,
been there?
yeah, it's funny because I had a friend from Germany come over, so I'm now like mixing my German and my
Like
Danish
Guten
right now.
Morgen is would be in German, right?
Yes, exactly, and godmorgen in Danish.
Ah, good morning. Okay, it's yeah, it's like a different variant of the same thing.
Oh, don't say that with if you say that to the Germans, they would be like, "No, those are both different languages. They're not the same. They're different. The Danes are not the same." So anyone who's from Germany and Denmark, I apologize already.
Oh yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so hi Kate, super happy to have you here today. Um, I see a comment here from Slava Dennis. Hi
Oh,
Slava, good
Slava. Yes,
morning.
I know Slava. She's yeah. I'll leave her identity anonymous, but she's really lovely. She's been
Okay,
to my events and so on, so I know her very well.
excellent.
So
Slava, if you can let us know if the sound and video is going well on your side, that'll be great. Just so we can move on with the actual live recording of this interview of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. While we are waiting for confirmation from people who are watching, yeah, I'm welcoming Kate to this conversation. This is a special week for me because it's been exactly 4 years that I launched what was at the beginning just Papa PhD, the Papa PhD podcast, and which is now Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. It was on the last Thursday of July of 2019. So yeah, it's like a
wow.
little celebration. Oh,
And thank you
Slav,
for having me and celebrating this with you. So that's so nice.
I'm super super happy to be able to be having this conversation today. It's kind of a small way to also celebrate 4 years with this across the ocean conversation. Slava says, "Hi, fantastic to see you. Sound is great, awesome. Thank you, Slavas. Super happy to have your feedback. It's always helpful. Often, or sometimes, things are happening on the side of the people listening or watching that I don't see here in the studio, but." Yeah, thanks, Slava. So yeah, 4 years, 4 years of Papa PhD, just crossed 100,000 listens a few months ago. Now at past 110,000, and yeah, super happy. Also, another special thing, and this is actually quite timely because the window, the window of opportunity closes on Monday. I I'm trying to get Beyond the Thesis nominated for the first time ever onto an award, which is the People's Choice Podcast Awards.
Mm.
So it's really from the listeners. So the listeners are the ones who nominate the shows to the slate to then go on and eventually run for the award. So if anyone watching now or later likes Papa PhD and Beyond the Thesis, yeah, just go to podcastawards.com. Of course, you need to register because it's a voting system, so they need to know that you vote once. But yeah, Beyond the Thesis is under the category education, and any extra vote will be super super appreciated. And I guess on sometime next week we'll have news on the final slate, and I'll let you know whether Beyond the Thesis is there or not.
So this is your last chance, guys. So go
Let's
vote for David up a PhD. So yeah.
Please do, please do. Awesome. So, Kate, I know that you have stuff coming up after our conversation, so I'm not going to delay anymore. Slava already has been charming enough to tell us that everything's going well, so we can start with the conversation, with our interview. And what I'll do is I'll pause for just a little bit, and then I'll give an intro. I will share your bio very quickly, and then we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
And now here I'm looking, and we are good on LinkedIn too.
Ooh.
All right. So let me just look at this here. There you go. Okay. Perfect. So I am ready to go. Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. This week, I have the great pleasure of having with me from Denmark, Kate Dahl. Kate is the founder and career consultant of her company, Career Denmark APS. She's an American who has lived and worked in Denmark for many years and has helped many international job seekers successfully find and secure their dream role in Denmark. Kate dropped her PhD while abroad and had to reinvent herself twice in the non academic field. Today, she helps expats like her find a place in Denmark's job market. And with her, we're going to explore the stories she has, personal, and the other stories she might know of reorientation and reinvention. And that is why I'm super, super happy to have you here today. Welcome, Kate Dahl, to Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD.
Thank you so much for having me, David. This is I'm really looking forward to our topic for this topic and to discuss further. And so, yeah, just shoot me your questions away, David.
Well, the first question is, I gave a really, really quick intro, quick bio of what, of your journey so far. And I quickly mentioned that you dropped your PhD, and then after that had to reinvent yourself a couple of times professionally outside that academic space. Can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe not go into all the details of dropping out, but I think normalizing the fact that sometimes dropping out is the right thing for you. I think it's always a great thing to do because people might be sticking to something that they'd be better dropping, and I think it's an important message.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, there's actually many reasons why I dropped out. First and foremost, it's just I was studying and doing my PhD in Germany, and how it works in Germany is that you have to find external funding. And so I wasn't able to find that external funding. So that was one of the other reasons. The other reason was love.
Hmm.
Love makes you do things like go to Denmark of all places, right? And I think
It's a
the
good
other,
reason. Hmm.
it's a good reason, but I also decided that if like I was going through this struggle about why am I doing this PhD, right? Like, why am I doing this? Is it really necessary for me? Because I was really doing it, I think, for the wrong reasons.
Hmm.
Part of it is like for the prestige and honor and possibly power in some way, because it's the idea that if you have a PhD, it's about getting respect from people.
Hmm.
And I found out that people don't always respect you because you have a PhD. You have to earn people's respect
Hmm.
in the end. It's not just about title or or gaining like notoriety in
Yeah,
this way,
yeah.
right? So I really question that, and it was always my dream to do a PhD because I think a lot of it was because I wanted my family to recognize me, and I would have been like the first woman ever to go and to have had a PhD or even a master's, by the way, because my mother was first generation American who, as a woman, who
Hmm.
actually went to university to study.
Okay.
Because in the United States, it's quite common to just have a bachelor's, but I wanted to take it further because I wanted my family to be proud of me. And I realized that I'm not going to make my family proud of me because of having a title or a
Hmm. Hmm.
diploma. It's just for, I realized that I needed to be happy. And
Hmm.
I would say those are the honest reasons why I dropped my PhD, to be honest. So, yeah.
And they're all super, super valid, and thanks for sharing that. Now, and also, if the what I think that is interesting is that some of those are very personal. They're not technical reasons. They're really personal reasons of relationships, of introspection, and I think that needs to be part of what you do before going into a PhD. But also, if you're in a PhD and you feel that there's something's wrong, that you're somehow not where you saw yourself as being, or you're not where you see yourself in a couple of years, and something inside tells you that you're not at the right spot. Well, you need to listen to that, and yeah, just change plans. Change of plans is not failing, it's just reorienting and reinventing yourself, which is where we're going.
Exactly, exactly, David.
So how was that first moment of, because for sure there's some aspect of you're leaving a community when you decide to drop, right? You're leaving a community, you may be thinking or having feelings of failing to a certain extent, and there's some mourning with a prospect that you had of having this diploma, etc., etc. How did that transition go, and what were the stepping stones to that first chapter, let's say, of reinventing yourself?
Ooh, that's a really tough question, David.
Take your time.
I mean, for me at least, it took me a long time to I kind of developed this imposter syndrome, I think, for a while, because when you drop something and if you don't finish something, you do feel like a failure in that way, right?
Mhm.
And I had to learn over time to I wouldn't call it, I guess you can call it forgiveness, but I had to learn to be compassionate towards myself
Mhm.
and to say that, I wasn't a failure in doing in dropping it, that I had to be kind and say that this is the path that it was just meant to be, and I found something better. And I mean, it's the romantic story that every woman wants to find her Prince Charming. And I was
Mhm.
very lucky to have found that man. And I've been with him for 12 years and haven't regretted it, since. And I've also learned that, and that was one of the things I really struggled with, was that if I dropped my PhD, would I regret it? And that's something I've been really struggling with even to this day, is, do I regret it? And I've just learned to let go and say that it's just that this is where life has taken me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that I had to be okay with it, and said that I am okay and I've made peace with that. And that led me to reinvent myself, is that, like, once I've made the decision to let go, then I was able to go into a new field and reinvent myself, because I had to completely let go, because
Mhm.
you have to leave, because I think a lot of the time, especially those who are expats, it could also be those who are academic as well, that we feel that our identity is our degree, or
Mhm.
our identity is our career.
Yeah.
And that's not who our identity is. Like, we are not, like, the PhD Kate Dahl, or, and this is something I still struggle with, to be honest, sometimes. And I'm also still on this journey
Mhm.
of finding that Kate Dahl is not a sale, like, Kate Dahl is not just sales. Kate
Mhm.
Dahl is not just career consultant for internationals in Denmark. I've had to learn that Kate Dahl is a mother. Kate Dahl is a wife. And Kate Dahl is more than who she is, than just the career aspect. Because I think a lot of times we take our career and we say, this is our identity, like, this is who we are. But is that really, David? Like, is that really who we are as people? And I think I would just, like, challenge everyone in that. And I'm still on this journey. Like, I'm still finding who Kate Dahl is. And I think every expat or any academic who is going to reinvent themselves, that, you have to remove that and say, this is not just me. It was me, and that's fine, but now you're going to leave it. And when you reinvent yourself, like, you have to accept and leave that behind and say, I am okay with this no matter what, because otherwise you're going to just go back to it and say, I should have done this and this, but because in the end you need to find peace within your own self. I firmly believe that.
Yeah,
So
I really, it's really interesting that you mentioned that. I get two elements from what you just said, and one is about letting go. When you close a door and choose another path, letting go of that closed door and putting it in the past, which actually is where it is. You can't go back and reopen that door, but we do have this tendency to kind of ruminate or just think back and say what would have been, or etc. But it feels to me like today, with all that's out there, even like in the Marvel universe, there's always talk about multiverse, etc., or on Foundation, Asimov's Foundation. We have a great vocabulary to kind of visualize this idea of when there's a fork in the road and you choose one path, then the other one, it's like an old branch that just needs to die off and go in the wind, because you should give all of yourself to where you are now. Anyway, it makes me think of I don't know if you know who I listened to this musician who's Krishna Das, I don't know if you know him,
no.
but have you heard about Ram Das? People who went to India in the 70s and came back with teachings, and the saying that they have is "be here now." It's one of the things that they have, and if you're living in the past, or if you're hanging on to something in the past that you feel that is unresolved or not well resolved, as you might have failed, or is a tarnish, you're not being here now. And I think it's very healthy what you're saying, that you are that exercise of letting go, because there's no use in that. The second very interesting thing is the one about identities, and that's something I've been really trying to find a way to communicate to, especially first year, second year graduate students, which is, yes, you are now in graduate school, but don't make it your whole identity. Graduate school is just two if you're a master's, but 5, 6, 7 years of your life, but you're going to live 80, 90 years. So your identity is the whole thing. You need to always keep the whole of your life in mind, in my opinion. And that helps in two ways. You don't over identify with one thing, and this means that if something goes wrong with this thing, it's not your whole life that crumbles. It's just a small aspect of your life that is just a detail in a way. And then it allows you keep uh, to keep nurturing other aspects of yourself, your creativity, activities that you like, that are, let's say, extracurricular, but that contribute to your mental health. I don't know if this resonates with you.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because I've also I've had like many crises of like, what do I do now? This is like part of who I am. But then like I've had to learn, and especially when I reinvented myself and said, okay, I'm going into sales now because this was in demand at the time.
Hmm.
That was just then again became consumed by that and been saying that this is my identity. And now I'm in this process of even now being a career consultant saying, this is who I am, but this is also might not be like, and it's okay that I embrace and saying this is who I am to some extent, but I am also okay in letting go and saying, maybe in 5 and 10 years, maybe I'm not going to be a career consultant for internationals in Denmark. Maybe I'm going to go into something else,
Hmm.
marketing or whatever, because I think it's also okay to do different things. And it's funny because like even this summer, like I was playing with I just wanted to meet new people, and I just became a host and helping people who are want to come to Aarhus to see the city. And I've just been doing it for kind of fun. And I said, yeah,
Cool.
actually, I could be like a tour guide, like because I like and because it's okay to like explore different things. And you don't and it's not because like I mean Career Denmark is doing fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's okay to explore different areas. But it's also okay to look back at your graduate studies and say, this was also me, but it's not all of me. And I
Hmm.
think that's okay to say as well, and saying, yes, I am the Master's of Arts. I am a European Studies major. but it's not all of me.
Of course.
So it's about like having the little puzzle piece. I like to make the example of puzzle pieces, because my 2.5-year-old son, he's now obsessed with puzzles right now. And I was like, and I find that very beautiful in the way where each little part of your life is a little puzzle, and
Yeah.
then like each part of that makes you, and that's your identity, and it creates the whole picture of who you are.
I
you
love it.
know
I love it, and I think it's super super important. And again, if only just for the fact that you're less prone to be depressed because you're failing at life, because professionally something's going wrong. If you see yourself as a multitude of different puzzle pieces, like you said, I really love it. And so you mentioned two reinventions. So sales first, what that was the first chapter, let's say, and
Mhm.
then eventually you came to this realization that there was a need for helping people who wanted to get a job in the specific Denmark job market. How did that come by? Was it through conversations with other people? Because it's quite different from sales, right?
It's funny because when you're a business owner and you're the only person who's running your business, then you are still.
There's some
It's funny
aspect.
because no, I actually have never left sales, because it's no, and it's funny because when I went my business, like I'm gonna just like not do sales and I'm not gonna do that. No, no, you still. I haven't run away from it 100%, and that's the beauty about reinventing yourself as well, is that you can still take something from previously and then take those skills that can transition into something new. And
Mhm.
that's what I did without actually realizing it in so many ways. But when I came to this idea or the conclusion that I really should, help internationals with their job search in Denmark, it became, I just, part of it was the need that I saw within the area. Like it was about 5, 6 years ago,
Mhm.
where it started out actually by simply going to my Danish lessons. And after some time, I remember like I got let go from one position, and my classmate next to me said, "Oh, you'll get something in no time." And then like 2 weeks later, I already got something again. And I remember her looking at me, and she's like, "Okay, Kate." She's like, "I'm going to admit, when I said like, don't worry, you're going to find something new, I really didn't mean it." It's like, I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "But listen, I have been looking for more than 2 years. I have would die." To get do anything like even related to what you're doing. I have a PhD in chemistry. She's like, and I've been trying forever to get something in academia or even in the private sector,
Mhm.
and I have not been able to get anything. So what
Mhm.
is your secret sauce, Kate? and and that really started to make me, that was one of the many things that made me start to think. And then there were other little signs along the
Oh, looks like,
uh,
oh, Kate, we kind of lost you, but you were saying there were little signs along the way. That's where I kind of lost you. Can you start?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there were some little signs along the way, like talking to some people in my network, and doing coffee meetings.
Okay.
And it's funny because one of the things that I wanted to do was conquer my fear of public speaking.
Mm.
So and I was thinking about, I said, what am I going to do as a topic? And it ended up being about tips and tricks on job searching in Denmark based on my story. And so when I collaborated with an organization, and promoted the event, my first talk was more than 80 people.
Wow.
Physically, this was before COVID, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
There's
And
something here.
exactly. And then I started to do workshops and different like events in Aarhus. And I was like, okay, maybe there's a need for all of Denmark. And I've just been doing it ever since, and then became an official company, the APS, a corporate company in 2020. Then COVID hit, and then
Mhm.
and change everything. But
Of course.
it's still a beautiful journey,
Yeah.
and that's just how it kind of naturally came about, actually. So yeah.
So what I love about this conversation today is that there's, I was talking about multiverses just a little a little while ago, and I feel that there might be great parallels between what you do and what I try to do in another way. I'm not, at least not yet, coaching people directly, but with Beyond the Thesis, which is taking people across this, to cross this ford of being in one world and getting into another world where the language is not the same, the culture is not the same. There's some interesting parallels there. So what I want to ask you is, what is it, if you had to distill in a nutshell the main barriers that people need to work a little bit on to cross from the non-Denmark to the Denmark job market?
Yeah, if they're already living abroad or if they're already living in Denmark,
Well,
or
let's see.
both.
What happens most frequently when people come to you? Are they already in Denmark or abroad?
It's really a mix.
Let's
It's a
say
mix of
let's say
50.
they're
It's
in
actually
Denmark. Let's say
50. Okay.
they're in Denmark, and they're not finding, like your friend, they're having trouble, getting a foot in the door. Let's say.
Yeah. So one of the barrier, I mean, you could argue that Danish language could be a barrier, and sure, that definitely could be a barrier depending on what area you're in. Like if you're going to be a nurse or if you're going to go into a specific, let's say Danish language research, maybe obviously you should be fluent in Danish in that,
Hmm.
right? So of course, it really depends on the field. But I always say that if there is a barrier, what that is, then just work on it. And I find one of the other biggest barriers is that internationals have a really hard time learning how to communicate their value in the Danish cultural context without losing themselves in the process.
Hmm.
And now what do I mean by that? So I think a lot of people who are academics, or either when they're reinventing themselves or abroad or wherever they are, they keep they do how they're, or normally how they would go about job searching from their previous home country, right? But they don't think about the cultural differences. Like, for example, in Canada and United States, you don't have a picture in your CV
Hmm.
normally. But in Denmark, that's quite common or expected,
Okay.
actually, to have a picture. So those are like, that's just one example of thinking like about these differences,
Hmm.
cultural, and then about not without losing themselves in the process. I think a lot of the times we try to do things too much and expect too much of what the majority wants.
Hmm.
And I think it doesn't mean that we have to agree or adhere to it, because I think as minorities, or as, let's say, if you're from, let's say you're from a country where your skin is a little bit darker. We'll leave it at that. There is still some issues in Denmark that I'm quite blatant about, where you have conscious and unconscious bias.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so if you have your picture on your CV, you have to think about two things. Do you think, okay, is it more important for me to get the job? Or is it more important to be proud of who I am and my identity of where I come from?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a really difficult question that I pose on pose on people when I do my one-on-one trainings, and say,
Hmm.
does this make sense? Because because this is a really big topic that is still being discussed. And actually, there's a pharmaceutical company in Denmark called Novo Nordisk, that in Copenhagen, that is one of the only companies that I know of. If anyone else knows of another company that does this, please tell me. That they're one of the only companies in Denmark that says, please do not put your picture in your CV, otherwise you will not be considered for the role.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really surprised by that, because no country in Denmark does this. I know, like, Lego is very progressive, and Lego they're a little bit more flexible, but Novo Nordisk is one of the only companies that I know that has spoken out about it. And I find that very progressive, actually. So a
Wow.
little bit I went on a tangent right there, but that's
No,
what I
no,
think.
it's not a tangent. It's really really interesting, and it does have a lot of parallels. And I'm sure it's the same. Right? People who go to grad school, especially PhDs, they often go abroad for that part of their academic life, and I'm sure they if they want to stay in that country eventually, like you said, if they're from that visible minority, BIPOC, etc. I'm sure, depending on where they are, this might be an issue for them, and it's super interesting that you mention it. Now, actually, Slava, who's still watching, thank you, Slava, has a question about identity, and I'm going to bring it up, and I will let you answer because I think it's really something that you um, can answer. Two important ID struggles in us: career and personal life, and both need energy, of course. How do you manage to keep them both in balance, Kate?
That is such a good question, Slava. What I love about Danish culture is about work-life balance. And so, for example, after today's live and after today's podcast, I am going to shut the computer and say, now I'm going to pick up my son and I'm going to spend time with him. And I don't between certain times. And I say from 10 to 4, for example, this is when I think about work. And this is when I'm going to, or let's say even job searching and saying this is, or like, this is when I'm going to like do my work identity, or
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm,
to say, right? My career identity. And then I leave that behind when I am with my son.
mm-hmm,
And with my family. And I actually don't even think about it. Or even if I'm tempted, and sometimes and I mean, we're human, we tend to slip up. It's funny because then my husband checks. I mean, he's like, Kate, are you working again? I'm like, oh, you're so right, honey. I'm sorry. Yeah. And we check on that because also my husband is also guilty of that. I'm like, are you working on your phone again, honey? He's like, yes, Kate, I'm sorry. And then we'll put away our phone and then we're family. And we really, really good at checking each other out very well.
mm-hmm,
So that's like a tip I would do is like, I don't know if it answers it 100% because it is about that balance, but I really like, that's the way that how I handle that right now.
mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah, I
No,
think
it,
that's the best answer I can give.
it does make sense.
So
And is so you're saying that it's part of Danish culture, this compartmentalizing of the different aspects of your life?
yeah, I would say it's more like I don't know about compartmentalizing, but I think it's about matter of when you decide to switch on and off. About when you're with family, like, or even like when I'm networking, for example. I say, okay, now I'm career consultant for internationals in Denmark, and at this place, I'm actually not career consultant for internationals. I am a mother, or I am going to
Mhm,
be I'm going to be the wife, or I am going to um, yeah, maybe I'm going to an event and I just want to meet people and I say
mhm,
I'm self-employed. And I actually don't mention I'm a career consultant for internationals in Denmark because I want
mhm.
people to look at me differently.
Of
And that's
course.
something I'm still struggling with even now. And when it comes to like work-life balance, it's very much for Danes that when they're at work and then they leave work and they're with family. And that's why it's so hard for internationals or foreigners to meet with Danes
I
because
see.
they go back to their lives at home and they're like very much compartmentalizing work
And
and private life, and it's
I see.
very much separated like a scissor, and that's
Mhm.
a pro and a con, you know.
Of course, of
So
course, of course.
yeah.
It's interesting what you were just mentioning before, and what you've been talking about makes me think. I'm reading this book right now called 4,000 Weeks: Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Berkman. And no, that's not it. It's not by Oliver Berkman. Let me see the. I guess there's another one. Yeah, it is. Okay, yeah, by Oliver Berkman, and he says if you uh, what he's saying is we have limited time on this planet, and that we all know. And he says in average it's 4,000 weeks, and work is has this tendency, especially today with technology, to becoming infinite. If you clear your slate there's more that's going to fall onto it, and there's always a reason to be working. So it is an interesting and I think useful reflection of being able to cut the cord at some time of the day, and again, it be here now in being fully in this in each kind of chapter of the day. I'm fully working when I'm working, and then I'm fully with my son or my family when I am. I really really like that. Now, so the parallel that I find with what you're saying is actually, yes, it's there. So often when people leave academia and go into, let's say, industry, which is already there's even like negative stereotypes on each side of that wall. Like, from academics have bad stereotypes about industry, and industry about academics. And yeah, there's this question of identity, but also of language, of knowing what is what is valued on the other side of the wall. And I feel that it's pretty much the same with people changing culture geographically. So my instinct, anyway, my instinct was right in that sense, that what you are doing is pretty close to what I want to do, which is to help people get out of academia and successfully go into another space. Now, when people come to you, and we have Slava asking about work-life balance. You've mentioned how it is for you and what the tendency is in Denmark. But can you share what problems or what barriers or obstacles people come to you with, saying, "Hi, Kate, I've been trying for this much time, and I'm this snag that's holding me back. Can you help me with it?" Do you have specific things like that you can share?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's funny because I would like to also go back to, because recently I've been helping a lot more academics going into
Okay.
the industry, and that's what I've been doing, and I have quite a bit of experience doing. And I think that's like one challenge is that, well, they go through two challenges. One, with academics, they still think like academics and they still apply how to talk. They talk like an academic when they're going into the industry, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you have to think a little bit, like help the reader understand, because you could see that, especially with academics, they love what they do, and they're very
Mm.
passionate about what they do, but they have to apply like their learnings from the industry, because I think from the industry's perspective on academics, they tend to think, well, they don't have experience with industry. Can they actually talk? They end up stereotyping them and say, well,
There you
can they
go.
actually work in a team?
Yes.
That's a big
That's one of
part
the
of it.
stereotypes.
Yeah, but it's also similar to Danish as well, because in Danish culture, teamwork is very, very much incorporated in
Okay.
Danish work culture. And so what academics need to do, or it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to be an academic. Like, I think it's just a lot of what internationals in general have a hard time, is that they focus so much on their hard skills that they forget about their soft skills. And that's and soft and a lot of times with internationals as well, or even academics, they hear back from Danish companies, they're like, sorry, your personality is not the right fit for us. And that makes, and I
Mm.
really don't like that wording, because it's very much about, because in Danish culture, that's the other thing, is that they're very much about, like, can this person fit into our team? Can we work well together? Can they work can they balance in being independent on a project and working in the team? Can they do both? And so if they don't like stress enough soft skills, and when a Danish company says, well, your personality is not the right fit for us, then as an international or even as an academic, they're like, what's wrong with my personality? And I tell them, there's nothing wrong with your personality. It's just how they word it. It's just what they're saying is that they weren't able to see your soft skills, because personality and soft skills in Danish culture are very much tied together. And I think it's the same in academia as well. And that's what I also try. One of the big barriers is just to be able to simply communicate that as well. And to also, and one of the other things that I really try to focus on is like on applications and how to communicate cultural nuances. Like there's I give an example. There is a philosophy in Denmark called Jentelo, or law of
Okay.
Yenta. And
Okay.
Jentelo, or law of Yenta, is this idea where you don't boast or brag or show too much of yourself. And as an academic, especially, you want to show that I have done this many academic papers, and
Mm-hmm.
I have gone to this many amount of conferences, and I have done this, and it becomes too much, like,
Mm-hmm.
for them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, you have to be very, very careful on the wording and how you do it, because if you say I was #1 in like or I was voted the best journal in like science and technology, I'm just making something up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So like, and if you say it like that, that's like, it would be such a turn off for them. But if you word it in a way and say, like, in the research group project was not like was voted the best, or if you mention it and put it together and frame it differently, then they're like, oh well, then they're like, okay, then they think you're a little bit more humble about it. And that's really the big challenge that you face, is
Mm-hmm.
mentioning that communication without breaking that cultural barrier a little bit. So, and I think that's a problem that everyone goes through, not just academics, but I think
No,
especially academics. So
of course. So we're reaching the end of the interview, but there's two things that I'd like to cover. But first, and one has to do with this, what you just mentioned of the cultural differences and the unknowns when you come from abroad. But before we do, I'd like to just take this moment to let you share where you are online, if people have questions for you, if they want to go to Denmark, but if they are curious about your experience, your journey, where's the best place to find you and to reach out to you?
yeah, so the best way to reach out to me is on careerdenmark.dk. You can fill out a free evaluation form as well to find out, what kind of help you need. And that just takes about 10 minutes to do, and I'll get back to you, and that's absolutely free. You can go on my website as well for a free ebook. And I'm also doing a free competition right now. So it's in the link as well in the comments, I guess.
Below
So,
here. Yeah,
oh, it is below there, but
for people watching, it's a bitly, it's a shortened link, but is there a place where they can find the competition? Is there a page on your website for it?
it's on all my social media platforms. It's not on my website right now,
Okay,
but it's on all my available social media platforms. All you have to do is nominate yourself and have others nominate you. And there's all the criteria is in all my social media posts. So just go to any channel on any of my social media posts and look at the rules and eligibility to be a part of that competition. So
perfect,
yeah.
perfect. And so Kate's website is careerdenmark.dk. On Facebook, you can find her as at Career Denmark. And then I guess you'll get there. For people watching, the link to the competition is scrolling here at the bottom of the screen. It's a long link, so we shortened it through Bitly. Great. So if you have any questions for Kate, if you want to hear more about her story, or if you actually want to reach out to her for her services, just click on these links. Of course, I will share them on the show notes if that's where you are right now. Now, to this question of the unknowns when you go into a new space. How do you apart, of course, from coming to you and getting help from you, Kate Kate Dahl, um, how can people get some intel about these differences? This Yenta law, I had never heard of it. So how do you, if you're preparing to change spaces, what's the type, in your opinion, of strategy tactic you can use to by yourself get some intel on maybe things you shouldn't say or ways to present yourself? Is that do you have something to share on that side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of resources like that are free on the internet, like with different, if you even put in like, work in Denmark, for example, you'll get a whole bunch of stuff about what it's like to work in Denmark if you just Google it, or even on YouTube. Even when you go to work in Denmark, I also collaborate with a lot of YouTubers as well, and you'll probably
Mm-hmm.
end up seeing me there as well. But and because I do a lot of collaborations, like I am doing with you today,
Mm-hmm.
so you can just go and think about what are the different keywords about knowing as well about the other thing I would also encourage is like a lot of times people think, oh, Denmark's this great country, but really think and say, is this really the right country and the right fit for me? And
Mm-hmm.
like, because I think a lot of the times, especially if you're an academic or somewhere else, you are applying to different countries, and it's quite often that you're moving all over the world for that position, but
Yes.
also find out if that country is the right fit for you and would you feel comfortable and happy there. Because a lot of people come to me and be like, I want to come to Europe. And I'm like, great. What country do you want to go to? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, it's like kind of saying like, I want to go to North America. And I'm
Yeah.
like, great. There's some similarities between Canada and the United States, but there are cultural differences between us as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
even between provinces, I would imagine it's the same with the states in the United States, right? But there's also Mexico, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So people tend to forget that. I mean, it's almost like saying like also like Asia. Like we forget how many cultures there are
Yeah.
in Asia,
It's
you
huge.
know. So it's huge, and that's what I also encourage everyone is like really, really think about. It's not just about Denmark. It's just think about what really get help and do the research on what kind of country you want to go to,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it should also be the right fit for you and where you think you'll be most happy as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
A question on that point before I get to my last question is: are there networks of expats that people could tap into for this sort of information?
Oh yeah, I mean there are different various Facebook groups and like different groups on LinkedIn, and just put in like keywords, you know, like in your field. Like even if you're an academic, you know, just say like look, try to find keywords like academics in Denmark or academics in Germany, whatever, right? Or PhDs,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You
Mm-hmm.
can find different groups like that on both LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'm a little bit sketchy on Facebook in
Mm-hmm.
some ways, but Facebook can also be a good tool. So
Of course.
just look into it and find out and just search those using those keywords essentially. So
Awesome. So now my last question has to do with the point that you mentioned a few minutes ago, which has to do with sometimes when you move countries, there is this invisible barrier to getting to know local people. And you're saying, especially in countries where people like have this like very sharp cut between work hours and then family time. Um, what type of advice do you do? How do expats end up kind of feeling that they're part of the community and integrated? Is there some advice that you can share on that side too?
yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the times as expats, we tend to go for what makes us feel comfortable first. And that might be like meeting other internationals or foreigners, or going to like what is comfortable, like, Americans or Canadians or Australians. And we kind of end up kind of keeping into our little bubble. And I
Hmm.
think that's a really big mistake. And I think it's about challenging yourself to really meet locals and meet the people, or meeting like Danes or the majority, right? And that could be simply like, take a yoga class or take some courses, or maybe go on a, if you like to, do a wine tasting or whiskey or whatever,
Mm.
just join those different events to meet people. It could also be Rotary, like join a Rotary club or find different clubs that you can join and join that professional network. Or I mean, academics tend to also keep within academics a little bit, especially internationals, but really challenge yourself to for the integration process to meet other, because it is really hard, especially
Mhm.
outside, and with as well. And also like if you're let's say like a mother, like as well, we have something called mothers groups. Like once a
Okay.
child is born, you are automatically put in the system where like you have like a group with mothers, and it could be, and I would say like just don't be asking for a group of internationals, be with a group, because that does happen, and I
Okay.
hear that a lot, and I'm like, they don't want to be with like the Danes or whatever, and I'm like, why? Like you live here in this country, so like
Makes total
go
sense.
meet go meet the mothers, and if your Danish isn't good, just try, and most Danes are very helpful, like to help you along the way. So
Mhm, mhm,
like
mhm.
just do those things to help you, and it's okay to be with other internationals to have that comfortability, but just be like, help get out of your comfort zone.
I love it.
So
I love it. It's great advice, and it's also great advice. Like I said, it's a parallel. It's really a parallel experience. It's really a great advice also for graduate students who are abroad. It's great advice. Of course, you do have that expectation when you go work somewhere that you might become friends with the people from work, but depending on the culture this might not happen. So being part of other groups, other tribes, is the way to go, I guess. And it is great advice. Kate, we were reaching really the end of the interview, sadly, but this has been great. I really found a lot of parallels between what you do and the graduate student, but also the academic moving to another space professionally. It's really clear to me that there's advice that you shared that applies on both on both of these realities, and one of them is find getting to know the language of that space you're going into. And I'm not saying the language, the oral language, but the cultural language. What is accepted, what is preferred. Often it's not the same as where you come from, and if you want to especially get a job, you need to be a fit. And I think it's a reality in wherever you are today. Companies or entities want a good fit with their teams, and so soft skills, knowing your soft skills, knowing how to present them, and just listing them is not enough. Knowing how to tell the story of why you are the not the right person for the job is very important. um and then this final aspect that we talked about, of if where you are, friendships at work are not happening because it's just not the thing to do allow yourself, or at least make an effort to get into the social the social network of the place through other activities that you like to do. I really think it's really important. If I feel you were going to say something.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it sounds all great, David. I have nothing more to say. So
So, well, Kate, this was great. Again, thank you so much for having accepted to come on Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I feel great energy coming from you. So I think people who end up working with you are very lucky to be able to be guided. You were talking about being a tour guide. Well, you're kind of guiding them into this unknown place. And I think a bunch of us in this community of some of us are coaches, some of us like me are just doing podcasts, but that's kind of what we want to do, is make a kind of strange, difficult experience smoother and productive, and in the end, happy and fulfilling. And I believe a lot of what you shared and a lot of what you do applies directly and with no question to scientists wanting to work outside of academia. So yeah, super grateful that we had this conversation today.
thank you for having me, David. It was lovely, and yeah, just one more reminder, guys:
Yes.
vote for Papa PhD's podcast. Go do that right now before you forget.
Thank you. Well, now that you said that, I'll just tell the URL. It's just podcastawards.com. You have until July 31st to do it. It's really easy. You need to register on the page, and then you find the education section. Find Beyond the Thesis there, and yeah, get us nominated to the slate for the podcast awards this year. That'd be great. Thank you, Kate.
Yes, thank you.
So this is it for the live recording. Thanks to everyone who's been watching. I see that there's still people there. Thank you so much. It's been great to have questions from Slava and feedback from her. And yeah, all the best for your projects, for the puzzle that you're building, Kate. I think it's a great one, and it's an inspiring story to share. And yeah, I hope you keep inspiring people and helping them navigate these like murky waters of changing places.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so too, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. So yeah.
Great. This is it then. Bye everyone. This has been another great live recording. This is now the start of the summer break for these lives. They'll come back in September. So thanks everyone, and have a great summer. And Kate, again, thank you so much. Have a great end of the day.
Thank you.